Okay, how's it going, everybody? So we're going to read some J.V. Stalin today. This is the military situation in the South. This is written in January 7th, 1920. And it appears that there are three different parts to it. Doesn't seem like a very long read, but these are three short parts. And yeah, it's just the military situation in the South. Let's go ahead and get into this. See, Section 1. Abortive plans of the Intente. I've always wondered, like, how do you not know how to say this word? I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. Intente. Because I know it was like an entire, side of World War One and all, but Entente? Okay, wow.
Entente.
Entente. Sorry about that. Abortive plans of the Entente. Here's the thing: when you only read, see, I never get to hear any history ever. I live in the United States in the 21st century. World history has not been here. Is not there's not a lot of it spoken about in our media. It's never brought up in our media when talking about politics and the context of where the world is today. And so everything I learn about things is just what I read. A similar instance to this is, or a similar case of this, is W.E.B. Du Bois. A lot of people say Web Du Bois because nobody talks about W.E.B. Du Bois in the culture in the United States, or in corporate culture in the United States, because he was, for one, a friend of Stalin and Mao, but he was a revolutionary figure of black liberation. And so we don't really hear his name a lot. But if you get online and you get into these groups that study history and study the history of black liberation in the United States, of the struggle for black liberation in the United States, you'll see it written, and you'll know who W.E.B. Du Bois is that way. But you could do that for years and read that, and nothing. You'll never actually hear the name W.E.B. Du Bois. So the whole time you'll just call him Web Du Bois. And it's kind of what I've done here with Entente. I've always said Intente because I never hear about the Entente. I just read about the Entente. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started into this. This is J.V. Stalin, the military situation in the South, January 7th, 1920. Abortive plans of the Entente. In the spring of 1919, a combined Kolchak-Denikin-Yudenich campaign was conceived against Soviet Russia. The main blow was to be delivered by Kolchak, with whom Denikin hoped to link up in Saratov for a joint advance on Moscow from the east. Yudenich was to strike an auxiliary blow at Petrograd. The aim of the campaign, as formulated in Guchkov's report to Denikin, was, quote, to crush Bolshevism at one stroke by depriving it of its basic vital centers, Moscow and Petrograd. The plan of the campaign was sketched by Denikin in a letter to Kolchak, which fell into our hands when we seized Grishin Almazov's headquarters in the spring of 1919. Quote, the main thing, end quote, Denikin wrote to Kolchak, quote, is not to stop at the Volga, but to drive forward to the heart of Bolshevism, Moscow. I hope to meet you in Saratov. The Poles will do their work, and as to Yudenich, he is ready and will strike at Petrograd without loss of time, end quote. That is what Denikin wrote in the spring when Kolchak's offensive on the Volga was in full swing. However, that plan failed. Kolchak was thrown back beyond the Urals. Denikin was halted on the river Saim-Lysky-Balashov line. Yudenich was pressed back beyond Yamburg. Soviet Russia remained safe and sound. But the Entente cannibals did not lose heart. By the autumn of 1919, a plan for a new crushing campaign was conceived. Kolchak naturally was ruled out. The center of operations was transferred from the east to the south, whence Denikin was to strike the main blow. As in the spring, Yudenich was to deliver an auxiliary blow. Another march on Petrograd. General Maevsky, the former commander of the Volunteer Army, stated in a speech on the day after Orel was captured that he would be in Moscow with his troops, quote, not later than the end of December by Christmas of 1919, end quote. The Denikinites were so self-confident that already in October, Donetsk capitalists were offering a prize of 1 million rubles in Tsarist money to the regiment of the Volunteer Army, which first entered Moscow. But it was the will of fate that this plan, too, should fail. Denikin's troops were hurled back beyond the Poltava-Kupiansk, Chertkovo line. Yudenich was routed and thrown back beyond the Narva. As to Kolchak after his defeat at Novo-Nikolaevsk, nothing but a memory had remained of his army. This time, too, Russia remained safe and sound. The failure of the counter-revolutionaries this time was so unexpected and sudden that the vanquishers of imperialist Germany, the old wolves of the Entente, were obliged publicly to declare that, quote, Bolshevism cannot be conquered by force of arms, end quote. The confusion of the imperialist fakirs was such that they lost the faculty of discerning the real causes of the defeat of the counter-revolution, and began to compare Russia, now with, quote, shifting sands, where even the, quote, very best general, end quote, was sure to fail, now with a, quote, boundless desert, end quote, where even the, quote, best armies, end quote, were sure to perish. Okay, so that's section 1. Let's read section 2 here. This is causes of the defeat of the counter-revolution. That was a board of plans of the Entente. This is causes of the defeat of the counter-revolution. What are the causes of the defeat of the counter-revolution and of Denikin in the first place? A. The instability of the rear of the counter-revolutionary forces. No army in the world can be victorious without a stable rear. While Denikin's rear, and Kolchak's too, is quite unstable. This instability of the rear of the counter-revolutionary forces is due to the social character of the Denikin-Kolchak government, which mustered these forces. Denikin and Kolchak bring with them the yoke not only of the landlords and capitalists, but also of British and French capital. The victory of Denikin and Kolchak would mean the loss of Russia's independence, would turn her into a milch cow of the British and French plutocrats. In this respect, the Denikin-Kolchak government is a supremely anti-popular, anti-national government. In this respect, the Soviet government is the only popular and only national government, in the best sense of the words, because it brings with it not only the emancipation of the working people from capitalism, but also the emancipation of the whole of Russia from the yoke of world imperialism, the conversion of Russia from a colony into an independent and free country. Is it not obvious that the Denikin-Kolchak government and its armies cannot command either the respect or the support of the broad strata of the Russian population? Is it not obvious that the Denikin-Kolchak armies cannot possess the passionate desire for victory, and that enthusiasm without which victory is altogether impossible? The Denikin-Kolchak rear is falling to pieces, and is sapping the foundations of the front, because the Denikin-Kolchak government is a government which spells bondage for the Russian people, a government which arouses the maximum distrust among the broad strata of the population. The rear of the Soviet armies grows stronger and stronger and nourishes the Red Front with its sap, because the Soviet government is a government which is emancipating the Russian people, and which enjoys the maximum confidence of the broad strata of the population. B. The peripheral position of the counter-revolution. Even at the beginning of the October Revolution, a certain geographical demarcation between the revolution and the counter-revolution was to be observed. As the Civil War developed, the areas of revolution and counter-revolution became sharply defined. Inner Russia, with its industrial and cultural and political centers, Moscow and Petrograd, and with its nationally homogeneous population, principally Russian, became the base of the revolution. The border regions of Russia, however, chiefly the southern and eastern border regions, which have no major industrial or cultural and political centers, and whose inhabitants are nationally heterogeneous to a high degree, consisting, on the one hand, of privileged Cossack colonizers, and on the other, a subject of Tatars, Bashkirs, and Kyrgyz in the east, and Ukrainians, Chechens, Ingushes, and other Muslim peoples became the base of the counter-revolution. It will be easily understood there is nothing unnatural in this geographical distribution of contending forces in Russia. It will be easily understood that there is nothing unnatural in this geographical distribution of the contending forces in Russia. For indeed, who else could constitute the base of the Soviet government, if not the proletariat of Petrograd and Moscow, Who else could constitute the backbone of the Denikin-Kolchak counter-revolution if not the ancient tool of Russian imperialism, the Cossacks, who are privileged and organized as a military caste, and who have long exploited the non-Russian peoples of the border regions? Is it not clear that no other, quote, geographical distribution, end quote, was possible? But the consequence of this was, and is, a number of fatal, inevitable disadvantages for the counter-revolution, and an equal number of inevitable advantages for the revolution. For the success of troops operating in a period of bitter civil war, it is absolutely essential that the human environment, whose elements nourish and whose sap sustains them, should be solid and united. This unity may be national, especially in the early phase of civil war, or class, especially in the developed phase of civil war. Without such unity, prolonged military success is inconceivable. But the fact of the matter is that for the armies of Denikin and Kolchak, the border regions of Russia, eastern and southern, do not and cannot, either from the national or the class standpoint, represent even that minimum unity of the human environment without which, as I have already said, serious victory is impossible. For indeed, what national unity can there be between the national aspirations of the Tatars, Bashkirs, and Kyrgyz in the east, and the Kalmyks, Chechens, Ingushes, and Ukrainians in the south, on the one hand, and the essentially Russian autocratic administrations of Kolchak and Denikin on the other? Or again, what class unity can there be between the privileged Cossacks of the Urals, Orenburg, the Don, and the Kuban, on the one hand, and on the other, all the other inhabitants of the border regions, not excepting the Russian Inogorodny, who have always been oppressed and exploited by their neighbors, the Cossacks? Is it not obvious that armies composed of such heterogeneous elements are bound to break up under the first serious blow of the Soviet armies? That every such blow is bound to increase the gravitation of the non-Cossack elements of the border regions of Russia towards the Soviet government, which categorically rejects dominant nation ambitions and willingly meets their national aspirations. In contradistinction to the border regions, Inner Russia presents an entirely different picture. Firstly, it is nationally united and solid, because 9/10 of its population consists of Great Russians. Secondly, achievement of the class unity of the human environment, which nourishes the front and the immediate rear of the Soviet armies, is facilitated by the fact that this environment includes the proletariat of Petrograd and Moscow, which is popular among the peasants and is rallying them solidly around the Soviet government. This, incidentally, explains that striking contact in Soviet Russia between rear and front, a contact of which the Kolchak-Denikin government has never been able to boast. The Soviet government has only to issue a call for assistance to the front for Russia, instantly to put up a whole array of new regiments. It is here, too, that we must seek the source of that amazing strength and unparalleled resilience, which Soviet Russia usually displays at critical moments. Here, too, must be sought the explanation of the fact, so incomprehensible to the civilized witch doctors of the Entente, that, quote, when the counter-revolutionary armies reach certain boundaries, the boundaries of Inner Russia, they inevitably sustain disaster. But besides these deep-seated causes of the defeat of the counter-revolutionaries, and of Denikin in the first place, there are other more immediate causes. We are referring chiefly to the Southern Front. They are improvement in the matter of reserves and replenishments in the Soviet Southern Front, improvement in the matter of supply. So one is the improvement of, he's got them in numbers here. They are, it says 1, improvement in the matter of reserves and replenishments to the Soviet Southern Front. 2, improvement of the matter of supply. 3, the flow to the front of communist workers from Petrograd, Moscow, Tver, Ivanovo, Voznesensk, who have joined our southern regiments and completely transformed them. 4, repair of the machinery of control, which had been completely shattered by Mamotov's raids. 5, skillful resort by the command of the southern front to flank blows during the offensive. 6, methodical character of the offensive itself. Okay, so this is section 3. That section was causes of the defeat of the counter-revolution. This is section number 3, present situation on the Southern Front. Of all Denikin's units, the force that must be regarded as the most serious is the volunteer army, infantry, because it is the most competent and has a large reserve of regular officers in its regiments, in Shkurov's and Mamotov's cavalry corps. The task of the volunteer army was to capture Moscow. That of Shkurov's and Mamotov's cavalry was to pierce our southern armies and disrupt their rear. The first decisive successes of our infantry were scored at the battles of Orel and the Kromy Dmitriev Dmytrovsk area. Here our infantry routed the best corps of the volunteer army, General Kutepov's corps, and corps with its Kornilov, Drozdov, Markov, and Alexeyev divisions. The first decisive successes of our cavalry were scored in the battles of Voronezh, in the area of the rivers Ikorets, Uzman, Voronezh, and Don. Here, Comrade Budyonny's cavalry group first encountered the combined forces of Skurov's and Mamotov's corps, face to face, and overthrew them. Our successes at Orel and Voronezh laid the foundation for the subsequent southward advance of our armies. The successes at Kiev, Kharkov, Kupiansk, and Lysky were only a sequel and development of our basic successes at Orel and Voronezh. The volunteer army is now retreating in disorder under the pressure of our units, with its communications and control disrupted, and having lost not less than half of its old effectives in killed, wounded, and captured. It may be confidently affirmed that, unless it is withdrawn to the rear and thoroughly overhauled, it will soon cease to have any fighting capacity. As to Skurov's and Mamontov's cavalry group, although it has been reinforced with two new Cuban corps, General Ulagay's and General Noemenko's, and General Chesnokov's composite division of Ulan's, it cannot present any serious threat to our cavalry. This was demonstrated in the recent fighting at Lysychansk, where the reinforced Skuro-Mamotov group was utterly routed by our cavalry, abandoning 17 guns, 80 machine guns, and more than 1,000 dead. Of course, it cannot be said that Denikin's armies are already smashed. Denikin's armies have not yet reached the degree of decomposition of Kolchak's armies. Denikin is still capable of certain tactical and maybe even strategic ruses. Nor should it be forgotten that in 10 weeks we have succeeded in capturing from Denikin in all about 150 guns, 600 machine guns, 14 armored trains, 150 locomotives, 10,000 railway wagons, and 16,000 prisoners. But one thing is indubitable. Denikin's armies are irresistibly following Kolchak's down the inclined plane, while our armies are growing stronger from day to day, both qualitatively and quantitatively. Therein lies the guarantee of Denikin's ultimate destruction. Serpukhov, December 26, 1919, signed J.V. Stalin. P.S. This article is written before Denikin's front was breached by our troops at Taganrog. That is, in fact, it explains its cautious character. But now, when Denikin's front has been pierced, when the volunteer divisions are cut off from Denikin's Don and Caucasian armies, when in 2 days fighting at the approaches to Taganrog, January 1st and 2nd, our forces have captured from the enemy over 200 guns, 7 armored trains, 4 tanks, and masses of other trophies. And when our forces, after liberating Taganrog, are besieging the seats of counter-revolution, Novocherkassk and Rostov, now it may quite confidently be said that the destruction of Denikin's armies is in full swing. Another blow and complete victory will be ensured. Kursk, January 7, 1920. The magazine Revolutionny Front, number 1, February 15, 1920. Signed, J. Stalin. We got one single note down here. This postscript was added by J.V. Stalin when the article was reprinted by Revolutionny Front, a magazine published in the Revolutionary Military Council of the Southwestern Front and the Council of the Ukrainian Labor Army. Okay, yes, that's the military situation in the South by J.V. Stalin. So, well, thank y'all for tuning in. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium. All of these are Marxists. Y'all hit me up there. Y'all have a great day in the Daragoy.